Well, good morning, gang. How are you? Just sleep well? All right. So when I woke up this morning, I wake up at 4, not because I'm ambitious, but because my whole body goes, well, you know what, we're done. We don't know about you, but we're getting up. So I got up and I looked outside and kind of waited. And then I looked a little bit closer and I thought, oh, we got a little dusting of snow. And then my wife sent me this picture. This is in St. Louis, you guys. They got 4 inches. They don't know what to do with that. I mean, they're probably shut down for the next month. We got 4 inches of snow. What are we going to do? So we're not doing bad. It's a new day with new mercies. And aren't you glad for that? I appreciated the team leading us this morning and just really centering us on the invitation that God wants to bring to us. New day, new mercies, new hope. Do you remember this scenario as a kid when you were learning to ride a bike? You remember this? Takes you back. Were you calm, cool, and collected? Probably not. But you learned, right? I mean, my daughter Maria, she was very demonstrative, and she'd be screaming, no, no, no. And, we were just trying to get her to settle down. And she used to say, well, Maria, do you want to go practice the bike? And she would go outside, and she'd look around the neighborhood, making sure no one's around. Then she'd come back. She goes, I know, Dad, I'm going to make a scene, but let's go, And that kind of learning, see, when learning happens, it takes us outside of our known zone. We have these zones that we have going on. We have this known zone, that's our comfort zone. We're like, I like that. I can do that. I can handle that. But when God calls us, He calls us to live by faith, and faith means you're going to have to learn. You're going to be like Peter and get out of the boat. And the thing about learning is you're learning. You've never done it before. It's Peter walking on the water. And when that happens, when you learn, what you're trying to discover is, how do I stay out of distress? And today, hopefully, some of the things that we talk about are going to give you a chance to really think about that. But I want to give you an accurate portrayal. I want to do a little exercise with you. You can stay right in your seats. You're fine. And what I want you to do is I want you to raise your right leg so your foot's off the ground and start to swing your foot in a clockwise direction. Got it? In a clockwise direction. And then extend your right hand with your pointer finger and draw the number 6. Weird, huh? It takes, patting your head and rubbing your tummy in a whole new direction. Doesn't it? And this morning I had breakfast with a couple. Missy, are you here? Yeah, there you are. I discovered that Missy's a gymnast. Could you do that? Oh, okay. Quite often, so when I sit with audiences and do it, quite often it's gymnasts that can do it and heavy metal drummers. Do we have any heavy metal drummers in the audience? Now, why? What's happening there is it's neurological wiring. But you could learn. I mean, I've seen people who said, I did it. And I go, come on, show me. And sure enough, they were able to do it. And the wonderful thing about how God has created us is that we have this neuroplasticity, that we have the capacity to learn and grow and change. But it always takes us to a place where we're feeling a little bit off balance and vulnerable. Now, what we're hoping will look like in our relationship is this nice, even you and them. Equal size, equal value, and you're together. This is the relationship everybody craves. But it is the hardest relationship to maintain. Because the reality is that you're two unique individuals. And you see the world as you are, not as the whole world is. So at some point in time, there's going to be a conversation and it feels a little bit more like this. Oh, I guess I got to surrender to what you do or what you see. And you start to feel a little bit diminished or a little bit displaced. And if this continues to happen, and if you continue to surrender, it's going to look a little bit more like this, where you feel like you're swallowed up. You can be in my world if you're in my world. And if you're kind of a controlling person, you might be the big guy. And if you're a pleaser or an avoider, you might be the small guy that's swallowed in. But what you find is that instead of being able to be you, you're lost in another person's world. And that's not what God intends. And that's not what you like. And you feel like you're drowning. So then what happens is this relationship. Okay, you're over in that corner, I'm over here, and we have a demilitarized zone between us. And we begin to live these parallel lives. And this is the relationship where most people come to see me. They're in this relationship. You know, we're under the same roof. We share the same bank account. But we just can't seem to work it out. And the big question that's in the center of that all, and this is why we start here, is this question of who will take care of me? Because listen to this, real love, real agape love is you giving you away. And you saw last night that you're a finite person, the sheet of paper, and that if you give yourself away, who's going to take care of you? Who's going to help you? When you're feeling like you're being shrunk or you're being swallowed, who runs in to help you? Because in reality, we don't want to end up this way. You feel swallowed up. You feel discounted. And when that happens, it's a struggle. Now, we need to think this morning, where did you start? And it's a little bit like how you learn to ride a bike. I want you to think about how you were formed as a person. And as I write on the board over here, can you folks over there, are you able to see okay? Okay. Good to know. Thank you. You see, when you're born, you get this little seed of DNA. And we're learning more and more about DNA. It's actually remarkable. It's more than just hair potential. It's more than eye color. It's contained just a wide variety of different things. But that little seed of a person, so here you are, and that DNA comes in. And obviously it has influence, right? I mean, I couldn't believe some of the things that I would notice in my kids, and I thought, they didn't see that. Somehow they inherited that. Or sometimes my wife would point it out. They didn't get that from me, which meant, yeah. But it's just the seed of a person. It's not finished yet. That seed has to get planted in these rings of relationship. Your family of origin, your extended family, the community around your family. And these relationships have an influence on you, right? What your parents say, what your grandparents say, what your teachers said, what your neighbors said, what they didn't say. And what they say has this influence on you, and it propels you into certain experiences. And those experiences have an influence. So someone might tell you, someone might have said to Matt, you really are good on the keyboard. And I love the way you sing. And I love the passion in which you sing. And that relationship and that information thrusts him in a certain direction. And it has an influence on him. And all these things are influencing you, and they're going to make you you. Does that make sense? We don't have control really over these things entirely. What we do have control is up here. The relationships we give ourselves to and the experiences that we give time, energy, and focus to. Right? So it really looks like this, that all these different places are having influence on us and are leading and forming us. And part of it is that influence taught you certain things about love. Your family of origin were the first people to begin to instruct you on the way of love. We do this thing as marriage and family therapists called the genogram. It's like a family tree. And the way it works is, I have a dad, Ray Spencer. I have a mom, Georgie Spencer. Here's my sister Mel, my sister Lisa. Along comes Mark. And then there's 7 years here. Then my brother Matt. And then my sister Mara. My sister Lisa always said I'm the adopted one. But there was dynamics here. And then they had parents as well. And interesting that they, in a day and an age where divorce was kind of really whispered about and there was a lot of shame associated, their parents divorced secretly and remarried secretly. We didn't find this out till way later. In fact, my mom didn't know the guy that she thought was her dad wasn't her dad until my grandmother's dying and she revealed the secret. It was astounding. So what they learned about love, at least in part, was when you have problems and struggles, you don't share them. You don't talk about them. And guess what we grew up with? We don't talk about that. And you know, I don't remember my dad ever saying we don't talk about it. We just didn't do it. But that's shouted at us. We don't talk about it. And when there's struggles with that, you know what you do? You just kind of go off on your own. That's what we learned. In my learning, what I started to do was learn alone and away. I told you about how I'd go to the creek and just be alone and away. And alone and away was how I survived. You see, at that moment, when you're growing and developing, you're developing a relational style. And the relational style is heavily influenced. It's how I'm going to survive whatever I'm living in. And my way of surviving was alone and away. That's the way that I can be safe. So the only way that I can be safe is to be apart from you. And it's not at all what I was hoping for. But opposites attract. So Mr. Alone and Away, who does he marry? Betsy Spencer, whose relational style is together and talk. Alone and away, together and talk. You see any problems? So, it's one thing to date, and then I can go back to my own space and go, oh, I don't have to talk. It's quiet. It's a whole nother thing when all of a sudden we put on these rings and we live under the same roof, and she keeps talking and following me around. And I would go into a room, and I think, oh, she didn't catch the hint. And I would go into another room, she didn't catch the hint. Finally, I would go in the bathroom, she'd go, at last, she caught the hint. But you can't stay in the bathroom forever. Not with Mrs. Talk. What are you doing in there? What do you normally do in the bathroom? You're in there pretty long. You see, my relational style needed to grow and learn and change. And when you're feeling that pressure, you just turn away. You go, I don't know. This doesn't seem to want to work. I don't know how to make sense of it. And you turn away. Because it's you. It's your relational style. That's you. That's what you know. And you don't know anything else. And all of a sudden you meet this other person that wants to be together all the time and talk all the time. And when the tension comes, you will go autopilot to that original style. Now, I asked you to fill out that other inventory, the how we love. Did you do that? Well, I would encourage you, if you didn't do it, to go back to the how we love side and do it. Because that work is your attachment style. That's the auto that you go to when you're under tension. You want to save yourself. And it happens so instinctually. Because at the moment where you feel the tension, it's like, boy, she just keeps talking. She wants to be closer. And I just need to be alone and away. The best part of your brain turns off. Your prefrontal cortex that helps you discern and figure out what does that mean and where am I and how do I navigate this this intense situation, you go to your midbrain. And all your midbrain does at that point in time is amplify what you're feeling in your body. You're under siege. You're sweating. Did you know your palms are sweating? Did you know you're holding your breath? Did you know your shoulders are way up and your gut is tight? Yes, I know that. Which sends you into the amygdala, the brainstem, which all the brainstem does is fight or flight. I'm either going to attack or I'm going to run away. It's this. It puts you in a place like the squirrel in the middle of the road that's doing this. And you're driving like, will you please just pick a side of the road? But your brain can't pick a side of the road because you're in your amygdala and it doesn't do that. And I'll have people that will come in and they'll relay about the discussion that led to an argument. And all of a sudden they said, I can't believe I said that. And I say, I can. Do you know why you said it? No, why? Because you were back here. And all this part does is fight or flee, and you just blurted. You didn't reason. You couldn't ration. And what happens is that you go into a certain direction where you're going to your old relational style, what you learned back home. Now, I want to walk you through these how we love things a little bit to give you some idea of the different ways that you have learned to attach and the way that you do it. And as you do it, I want you to kind of listen. If you didn't take the test, listen for that kind of sounds like me. Okay? So the first one is the avoider. I get a lot of avoiders. I live in Minnesota where we don't have problems and everybody's good, right? I don't know what it's like in Wisconsin, but Minnesota, everybody's good. They're always, yeah, we're fine. We're fine. Avoiders are always saying that. I'm fine. And they're comfortable meeting needs, but they're not comfortable letting you know about theirs, which is another Minnesota trait. And feelings, I don't do feelings. In fact, I have a poster on my office of Spock from Star Trek, who has no feelings. And I need my space. And so it's a little bit like mine where, you know, the only way that I feel safe is if there's a gap. I like to be alone and away. And when the pressure comes on, I can talk about that, but no, I don't do feelings. And you maybe grew up in a house that was like mine, that didn't do feelings. But if you're a person who you relate to that, yeah, that's me. I grew up in a house where we didn't discuss like how we felt or what was happening. Oh, excuse me, I raised a hand. What you want to do is think about some of these things. Number one, practice risking sharing a need. When you do that, when you practice risking sharing a need, it's going to feel like when you were doing that exercise with rotating your foot and drawing a 6. Whoa. Because you're learning. You're outside your known zone. You're outside of that, and you're going to have to just settle and slow down. Work hard at noticing emotions. It's okay. Start with not having to say anything about it. Just notice them. I noticed that. I can identify that feeling. A lot of the avoiders that I talk to are guys, and we'll be in a hot moment, and I'll ask them, I'll say, well, what are you feeling there? And they'll say, well, I was thinking that. And I said, no, not what you're thinking. What were you feeling? Well, yeah, I heard the question, what I'm feeling, but here's what I'm thinking. And I said, no. Not what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Well, I don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling. And that's a problem. Because if you don't know what you're feeling, the feeling's still running the ship. Because it's taking you right back to that old style. Which is going to lead to you practicing being vulnerable. And by all means, don't surrender to the practice of avoiding. This is going to take practice. It's going to feel like, wow, I'm really having to learn how to draw that 6 while I'm spinning the other way. Those are avoiders. Then there's my group, the pleasers. What do you want to do? Can't we just get along? No is a really hard thing to say. Pleasers' mantra is, I'll be happy when you are. And so when you go through a house where there's lots of craziness and drinking and chaos, you're just trying to find a little bit of peace. And if I can do something that will make everybody laugh or happy or settled, I'll do that. you know? But it creates a style where I'm always having to please, and it's a problem. So, when you're there, you can find yourself feeling increasingly unhappy because what you're always noticing is what other people want, and you can't notice what you really want. I'll get pleasers that will come in. Like I'm just thinking about a couple that I met with a few weeks ago, and the person said, I'm done. I said, okay, let's start there. What are you done with? I'm done with this. What's this? This marriage. Okay. So what is it about the marriage that you're done with? I'm just done with him. You're done with him. Okay? And what is it about him? Well, he's just always so demanding. So we took it apart, and really what was happening was he wasn't necessarily being demanding. She was so good at guessing what he would want. And she just gave it because she was a very proficient pleaser. But she was at that point of time where she was just feeling swallowed up. But the problem wasn't necessarily that he wanted to be a big orca whale. The problem was that she didn't know how to say, I want to do this, or I don't like this, or I want to change this, because she felt that that would make it unpleasant. And pleasers are like, oh, I can't make it unpleasant. I can't be part of the unrest. And so what pleasers need to do is they need to get real good at saying, no, I don't want to do that. And to stop guessing what other people want. And to start thinking, yeah, I'm aware, because a pleaser will know, oh, I know what you want, but stop. Now what do you want? What would you like to see? And one of the key practices for someone who's a pleaser is not to surrender to the yes so quickly, because that comes so naturally. Sometimes there's not even a conversation. I just do what I think they want me to do. Of the attachment styles I see, avoider and pleaser are the most common. But there's more. There's a vacillator. A person who feels like the squirrel in the road. They're like, does anyone understand me? They get nervous. The closer they are in a relationship, the more that they're just trying to figure out. Like, I pick up vibes from you, but I pick up vibes inside of me, and I don't quite know what to do, and it just feels really shaky and unstable. And so people like that struggle in vacillation, what they want to do is they want to create some kind of a space because it feels very unpredictable. And yet they're starving for connection and closeness. And they don't know how to get it. They don't know, what do I do, because I feel so unsettled. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But just if you identify with that, where you're a person who struggles with getting close to people, either inside of you or guessing what they're wanting, there's some things that you can do. Number one, practice good self-care. Take care of them in the relationship, but take care of you in the relationship. What is it that you need? Well, that's going to require maybe some self-reflection. What do I need? Maybe some prayer. Lord, what do you want to say to me about this? And probably one of the prominent things to do when you're a person that is in that vacillator is don't surrender to panic. Practicing calm, which we're going to talk about in a moment, is so critical. The way some people deal with the instability of a relationship is they go to this style. They're a controller. Look at this lady. I would not mess with her, would you? And really the mantra of a controller is, no one took care of me, so I am now. I remember sitting with a couple when I first started in pastoral ministry 40 years ago, and they had come in, and they were a very quiet couple in church, but boy, in the office it was anything but quiet. And then finally, she turned to him and she said, you need to shut up. And woo, it was like someone swung an invisible but massive hammer. And he slid down in his chair and his head slunk down, and she took control. And so I looked at them and I said, well, that worked, didn't it? And she glared at me because she was losing control. I said, do you feel connected to him? No, but at least he's quiet. Do you feel connected to her? Absolutely not. And see, that controller, that's that picture where the circle is swallowing the other. You feel the instability. When you move to the relationship you hope for, equal size, equal value, equal power, and you're together, joined together, it's the two becoming one. When you move to that, you will always feel this kind of this instability because you're really two unique individuals. And the way to handle that is not through more control. It's about sharing control. And so when you're a person that struggles with that, instead of going to the I'm going to swallow you whole, practice surrender to God. Lord, you're the one that has all authority and power. You're the one that can handle this. And usually when there's control, there's anger underneath it. What's driving that anger? It's important to notice that. And finally, just give up the sense of having to be the person who always is in charge. There's one more style, and we all visit this relational style. The victim. Now, everyone in this room has been victims. Everyone in this room has been hurt. If you're here on planet Earth, it's happened. People have said unkind things. They've misrepresented you. They've told your secrets. They've hurt you. They've violated you. We all go through this. But when you're really injured, you can begin to posture yourself. You see, the thing that happens when someone is victimized is it hurts. Right? Say, ouch. Can't believe you did that. Can't believe you said that. And all of a sudden, you're hurt. And what do you do when you're hurt? Remember as a kid, when you were learning to ride the bike and you fell off and you skinned your knee, what did you do? And then your mom came and said, can I look at that? Because I know what you're going to do. You're not just going to look at it. You're going to get those fingers in there and put something that really stings in there. So you're like, no. So what a victim does when they're hurt is they put up a bubble, which becomes a lens that you look through. And from your vantage point inside the bubble, there's only two kinds of people. One is a superhero. And a superhero is a superhero because they do what you want them to do. They respond to your request. They respond to your no's. But you know what? There are no superheroes, are there? No one's going to do it perfectly, which leaves only the second group, meanies. You're out to get me. I know it. You're just like the rest of them. You're coming after me. And that becomes your lens. And whenever we've been hurt, whenever we become a victim, this is a temptation to look at it. Well, I'm done with you. You're a meanie. I'm going to look for my superhero. I can't tell you how many people tell me they're leaving this relationship because they know they're going to find a better relationship somewhere, and they don't understand the work involved of leaving one and starting another. And so if you're a person who struggles in this arena, I want to encourage you, find some support group, a legitimate group of people that can help you rethink, because the key to stepping out of this is the victim says, okay, enough. I'm getting rid of my barriers. I'm going to try again. Lord, I'm going to give you that hurt. Lord, I'm going to give you that concern. And I'm going to open up. It doesn't mean that you are without boundaries, but it doesn't mean that you're not putting up this big wall. So, those are all the different attachment styles that we learn. Avoider, pleaser, vacillator, controller, or victim. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Which one do you identify with most in a moment of conflict with your partner? Do you try to minimize the problem and avoid it? Do you try to figure out what will make quick peace and offer it and please them? Do you get super nervous and excited and emotional and upset? Do you take charge? Say, all right, enough of this. Or do you draw a big bubble? Where do you go? Open your eyes. We start here because remember, a good marriage is two good people working on getting gooder. Each individual doing their work. And in order for you to break this cycle of your inheritance, your family line, your automatic relational style, there are 4 things that are super helpful, that have helped so many couples, that have helped me. And I'm just going to give you the 4, and we're going to walk through and do some practice, and then we're going to wrap up this morning. The first thing that is so critical is to find settled. Close your eyes again. And I want to just walk through a body scan with you. As you sit there, what do you notice? The top of your head. Is there tension? Is there tension in your temples? The base of your neck? Is your throat tight? As you continue down your body, are your shoulders up? Are you braced? Are they forward, up? Is your back tense? Is your gut tight? Any place that you notice tension, notice it. Say, Lord, will you take that? And do your best just to unwind it. Just let it go. Are your legs tight? Are you pushing on the floor, bracing? Are your hands, are they closed, tight? And perhaps most importantly, what's your breathing doing? Are you holding your breath? Are you taking short breaths? Or are you breathing in a relaxed, long breath? In fact, take a deep breath. Relax your shoulders. Open your hands. And open your eyes. Now, I'm not trying to be a weirdo doing new age things to you. Here's the reality, you guys. Your heart, your soul, is housed in a body. And this body is like the dashboard of your car. And you know what's going on under the hood of your car by what that dashboard says. If this red little sign comes on, check engine, should you keep driving? Not for long. I just talked to someone and they said, I kept getting this light on. Yeah? And it just was like a little yellow, it looked like a drop. Was it your oil light? Yeah. What happened? The motor ran tight. You see, the dashboard was trying to say there's something going on under the hood that you need to pay attention to. Your body is like a dashboard. When you're in a relationship, your body is part of your mind. It's part of the receptor. It's part of the satellite. It's why the psalmist says, be still. And we need to learn and practice to be still. There's so many communication books, good communication books about marriage. But you know what? They will not work if your body is tight. You know why? Because your body is screaming to your brain, We're in a war. And when you're in a war, you're not going to talk to your enemy by like, what I hear you saying is, that's not going to work. Because you're revved up. Nothing will work. In fact, there's nothing that we talk about, nothing that you've heard in any other retreat, anything you'll read in any marriage book or anything you see in any marriage video, if you're not settled. So you have to pay attention. I know the signs of my unsettling. The first thing that happens to me when I can tell that Betsy's got that look in her eyes like we need to talk, I recognize it now. She comes in and she sits down, my shoulders go up and up and up and up. When my shoulders are up this high, they're screaming at my brain, we're going to die. My brain is not working. It will not work until my shoulders come down, until my heart rate slows down, until my breath gets more rhythmic. You have to find settled. So here's some things to note in that regard. Note your breathing and your heart rate. Take some breaths. We can recycle your nervous system in about 45 seconds if you take some good breaths. Through the nose, out the mouth. Let the shoulders drop. Open the hands. What's your brain doing? Where's their tension? And Lord, where are you? Because if you don't, look at the difference, you guys. This is a brain. This is the front. That's the nose, your eyes. This is your prefrontal cortex, all lit up. As soon as you're struggling, look at the gap. Look at the hole in your head. The best parts of your brain are completely off, and you're trying to have a very hard conversation. It won't come back on until you calm. Because the reality is that we're all meant to live in a settled place called joy. That's what we want. That's what we look for. We're looking for how can we get settled. Because joy isn't yippee-skippy, I get everything I want. Joy is this settled sense that I know God's got me, God's got this, even though I don't like what's happening, there's a way through. And Mount Joy is where we're meant to live out of. But we have these emotions that are around that. And they're like little antennae that are always reading, looking for trouble, sadness, shame, disgust, fear, and anger. And the minute that you get activated in anger, you slide out of joy and you wind up in a pit of anger. Just like that. It happens so suddenly. You can't believe that all of a sudden I'm down there. Which is why in that moment, you've got to catch yourself and to realize, oh, I can feel it in my body. I can tell what's going on in my soul. That's the moment where we talked about the triangle. Lord, as I calm myself down, I have to say, you got to catch me. You got to lead me. When Jesus says, I am the way, it's not a metaphor. You will not be able to find your way back to joy apart from him. With him, you can. But you see, in the moment when you're struggling and when you're getting pulled down under and it feels like you're lost, you don't know, how am I going to get back? And you won't know until you connect with the Lord, until you calm your body. You recognize what you're feeling. You release it to him. You receive his grace and you respond. That's the job. Now, there's two other things that I want to tell you. It's going to be quick. That in these moments, that's foundational, that you learn to calm yourself and that you learn to entrust yourself to the Lord. Because in the moment, the question you're struggling with is, who's going to take care of me? And you feel like your spouse won't. So you need someone who will. And that's in a real relationship with the Lord. I was talking to some people, just so you understand me here, and I was talking to some people about this, and they were saying, well, Mark, I'm trying to read my Bible more. And I said, that's good. And I'm trying to learn to pray better, kind of like what Matt was saying up here. But what I'm talking about is a living relationship that understands that you're in the presence of the Lord. When Jesus was leaving and he said to his students, I want you to abide, he meant that. I want you to learn to live in my presence in such a way, because what you need in this world, you won't find in the world. You have to craft it inside. Which is how the Apostle Paul writes the letter of joy in the Philippian jail. It's not because the jail is a great place to live. It's not because it's fun to be there and he's so happy. He starts out the letter by saying, I remember you as I pray for you, and I rejoice. He's remembering and he's recalling. And so your relationship with the Lord is this constant litany of reconnecting with the Lord, remembering what he's done for you, remembering what it feels like to be in his presence and carry that. It's not about you studying the Bible for 4 hours a day. That would be wonderful, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's a developed understanding of this is how it feels in God's presence. And it's so important. When I was sitting with a family that we were doing an intervention with, a fellow who was a functional alcoholic, a big, powerful businessman. And so you've got all the family there, and they're beginning to read their letters of confrontation to him. Because the idea is to raise the bottom and to bring in awareness. And all of a sudden, out of a quiet moment where one person's reading, a lamp goes flying across the room. It's him. He's thrown a lamp. Another person picks up a chair and throws it back at him. And all of a sudden, it is like a full-on rugby party. And people are screaming, and they're throwing, and there's pushing, and there's shoving, and there's swearing. And I'm sitting in my chair, just like this. And I say to the Lord, well, this is interesting. And I hear the Lord say, a gentle answer turns away wrath. Well, what does that exactly mean, Lord? A gentle answer. So this is literally what I did while they're screaming. Could we sit down? I said just that same tone. Could we please sit down? I said a third time, could we please sit down? And finally, the guy who we were doing the intervention for spins around and he goes, what did you say? And I said, I'm wondering if we could sit down and restart. And you guys, it was like all of a sudden someone banged everyone over the head with a hammer because they just sat down and were quiet. I would not be able to do that if I didn't have a fostered, practiced sense of what does it look like to stay connected. Now, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. If I can do it, you can do it. And furthermore, the Bible promises you can do it. So practice it. You see, that's the thing that you need to do. That's the moment where you coach you. You take care of you. You take you to Jesus. And as you go, one last thing. Just don't say it. We all have those moments where we have one more thought. And another thing. Oh, and I want to tell you. Just don't say it. Just don't say it. We're going to talk more this afternoon about how do you solve conflict. What does that really look like with all these things that we're laying out here theologically. But please listen to me. Work on staying calm. Connect with Jesus. You coach you through that process. Find your calm, but please just don't say it. How many of you guys have heard this thing where it says it takes 20 encouragements to wipe away a criticism? Have you heard that? There's no scientific proof for that. And you know what I would say? It takes far more. And you know, you could offer those encouragements in the hopes of erasing that criticism, but reckless words pierce like a sword. And you could do damage that's irreparable. And we all trust grace to cover our mistakes, but it's so critical. Just don't say it. And wait for the moment when you can. A couple of things that I want to close with, and I'm just going to race through these slides. Close your eyes with me just for a moment. We covered a lot of ground this morning. Take a breath. What stands out to you? Is there something that stayed with you? Note that. Note that. You can open your eyes. I want to also ask you to do me a favor. Back there is my book for sale. There's a basket there, but use the basket both. If you want to buy a book, great. If you don't, great. But I want to ask you guys, if you came here with a question you would hope would be answered, write it on a piece of paper, fold it up, and put it in that basket. For this session, for next session, a question you're carrying. It might not be even something we talked about in this session, but when we are on session 4, the closing session tomorrow, I'm going to answer some of those questions that I found to be common. So share your question. You don't have to write your name on it. It's going to be there anonymous. But everyone usually carries questions into these things that they're hoping gets answered. And I'll do my best to do that. Stand up, would you? You've been really good listeners. We've covered a lot of material, and I want to pray for you now. Even as I go to prayer, this thought comes really clearly to me. I want to encourage you, and I do this quite often with couples that come to see me, because when they come to see me, they talk about things that they can't talk about at home without fighting. And so they're on their best behavior when they're in my office, but then they have to get in the car, and they have to go home, and it feels pretty tense. And I want to encourage you that what you're feeling in those moments is the intensity of the learning. Just like when you tried to rotate your foot and right 6, you're feeling the off balance. Trust the process with the Lord over it. And give grace to one another as you learn. You're both on wobbly bikes at the moment. So, Lord, as we close, just mindful of how glad we are to read in the Gospels the story of these 12 guys that were struggling to keep up with you. They bring hope to us. Whether it's Thomas asking questions, whether it's Peter opening his mouth just to change feet, whether it's Judas conniving, we see in there that there were 12 students that were struggling to learn. And yet when we open the book of Acts, we see different students. They graduated. So Lord, we're going to go from this place having thought about our families, what we learned or didn't learn about love, our style. And I pray for each person here that you would hold them. You would help them. That somewhere in the course of this morning and this afternoon, that you would move in their hearts in such a way as your presence would bring peace and hope. Because we know this, Lord, that you didn't invent marriage to torture us. You invented marriage because you wanted us to learn and to grow and to share love just like the Trinity does. So you, the master and maker of marriage, keep mastering and making our marriages, would you please? In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you, gang.